Hello friends, welcome back to Just Joshin' Around, your one-stop shop for entertaining, educational, and most importantly, fun video content. I'm your host Josh, and today we're going to take an adventure into the very heart of the video game Kingdom. That's right, you guessed it. I'm talking of course about Earthworm Jim. Earthworm Jim, or E-dubs as I like to call him, is about a worm in a super-powered suit. What's that? We're not talking about that? Well, what are we talking about? Kingdom Hearts? But I've never even played those games before. Well, after a lengthy conversation with my good friend Michael, or Zichmail as I'm going to call him from now on, because apparently in these games, in order to come up with a new character's name, all you need to do is take an existing character's name, throw it into a bingo ball tumbler, and add an X, and then blammo, you've got yourself a new character's name. By the way, be sure to check out my other channel, Onsij Haas Januxaturd, for new weekly content. Anywho, Zichmail was able to explain to me in very great and vivid detail what the world and the overall story of Kingdom Hearts is all about, of which I retained very little. Sorry. There's a kid named Sora. There's a buttload of Disney stuff in there, which is kind of neat. There's some heartless nobodies that you fight. And there's a Keyblade, or more specifically, a whole crap ton of Keyblades. But luckily, we're going to focus on the one Keyblade today, the most iconic, the Kingdom Keyblade. You see, a short time ago, my pal Zich requested that I make him a Keyblade, and I was happy to oblige. Now, luckily, he picked the Kingdom Keyblade and not one of these other way more complex ones. Well, I could attempt to explain more about the Kingdom Hearts series throughout the remainder of this video, but I honestly wouldn't do it justice. Though it sounds like a fantastic and complex story full of really cool stuff, I'm just not familiar with it. However, I would like to play the games at some point because they do sound pretty awesome. Anyway, I think I've rambled on long enough. So, without further ado, this is how I made the Keyblade. For this Keyblade, I'm using everything you see here except for that piece of purple heart you see laying there. I ended up using a scrap piece of 1x4 instead of that. I measured, marked, and cut both the 2x6 and the dowel rod down to the rough sizes that I would be needing, being careful to leave just a little bit extra material on each one. I'm marking all of my measurements onto this piece to make it into a trapezoidal shape. This is the piece that will end up looking like a crown. After cutting it down to the rough shape, I started marking down all of my measurements. I did not work off of an exact template here, so I ended up using a lot of freehand to make it look like a crown. After getting the one side drawn up, I transposed the lines to the other side. Once the crown was completely drawn up, I used the scroll saw to cut it all out. For the hilt/guard of the Keyblade, I'm using some rough measurements along with a compass to achieve the shapes that I want. This again is a combination of measurements and freehand. After I got the rough shape drawn up, I once again used the scroll saw to cut it all out. I then used the first piece as a template to mark up the second piece, and then cut it out as well. For the Mickey Mouse keychain, I just drew up a larger circle with two smaller circles attached to it, and then cut it out once again using the scroll saw. So the main shaft of the Keyblade needs to go from 2 inches down to 1.5 inches for the grip. And rather than trying to sand all that, I made a really crappy, junky looking lathe. But we'll see how it works. Much to my surprise, this lathe actually worked really, really well. At least according to my lack of experience. I have never used the lathe before, and I don't have any turning tools or anything like that, so I used some basic wood chisels. My initial thought was to use my electric drill to turn this. However, I quickly decided that that would be a horrible idea, because I couldn't control the speed on it, and this piece would probably fly out and knock my teeth out. So I decided to use my battery-operated drill with a 1/4-inch lag screw secured in the chuck, spinning the dowel rod against a 1/4 20 by 2-inch bolt secured on the other side. Obviously this isn't the perfect solution, but it worked for my needs. Next up, I used the rounded edge of my belt sander to round out the edges of the hilt guards and the crown portion of the Keyblade. For the crown portion itself, it needed to taper down from 1.5 inches to 1 inch. So I measured it all and marked it, and then used the belt sander to achieve that. For the hilt guards, I just used the belt sander to smooth up all the surfaces that I could, along with the Mickey Mouse keychain. For the remainder of the surfaces I couldn't get to with the belt sander, I just used regular old sandpaper. After getting all of the surfaces nice and smooth, I moved on to gluing. For these hilt guards, it was a little bit tricky. I had to apply the glue to both surfaces and then clamp each one to the main shaft, while also ensuring that the alignment was straight. After applying the glue to all the surfaces, I used a brad nailer to attach each piece onto the shaft, before moving on to the crown to do the same. I set the crown to the same alignment as the hilt guards, and then repeated the same process, gluing and then brad nailing it into place. Where each piece was connected, I used wood filler to fill in all of the gaps. I also applied wood filler to any nicks or blemishes that I found on the Keyblade. I was careful to apply multiple coats of the wood filler to each piece that was connected in order to smooth them to make them look like they were one piece. For the grip itself, I was marking out a diamond-shaped leather wrap pattern, which I then used my chisels to carve out. This was a little bit tricky, but since the dowel rod was made of poplar, it wasn't too bad. After getting all the pattern carved out, and after the wood filler was all dried, I started to sand everything nice and smooth. This took a good bit of time and patience to get the look and feel that I was wanting. This wood filler is very easy to work with, but once it dries and you sand it, it really makes a lot of dust. For the two hilt guards, I added some extra detail by using a 5/8 inch Forstner bit. I did this on both sides of each hilt guard. As for painting, I decided to use this 2-in-1 primer that I had read about online. I wasn't actually very happy with the results from this primer. I applied 2 coats to the Keyblade, and each coat took 1 can apiece, which wasn't very good. For the hilt guards, I used this metallic gold Rust-Oleum paint, which worked pretty well, although I would advise some extra dry time for this stuff. For the grip itself, I used this flat, dark brown Tester's model paint. And I forgot to mention, but for the shaft itself, I used this metallic aluminum Rust-Oleum paint. For both the gold and silver portions of the Keyblade, each took 3 coats of paint apiece. For the small blue accent on the Keyblade, I'm using this gloss dark blue along with some silver pigment powder. a little too much silver pigment powder, actually. After getting that little clump cleared out of there, I poured in some extra blue paint and mixed it all up. This made it have a nice metallic blue appearance. These Testors model paints always cover really nicely, and I rarely have any problems with them. After the brown paint was dried on the grip, I applied some brown shoe polish over top of it. This helped to achieve a natural leather-bound appearance. The final step was to secure the Mickey Mouse keychain into place. I installed a 1/4 inch eye bolt into the main Keyblade and a number 8 eye bolt into the Mickey Mouse keychain. And with that, the Keyblade was ready for its final reveal. I'm really very happy with how this Keyblade turned out. And while I know there are probably a ton of different ways to do one, this is the way that I chose to do it. You know, to be honest, before doing this project, I always thought that Kingdom Hearts looked kinda dumb, but after learning a little bit more about it, I kind of appreciate how cool it is. It's definitely something that I'm interested in learning more about. And just like the Star Trek project before, that probably wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been asked to do these in the first place. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Well, that does it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, because I really did enjoy making this Keyblade. And, like I said, I would like to play the games at some point. If you guys have any suggestions or requests for me to make anything special, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to get to it. Even if it's not something that I'm extremely familiar with, like Star Trek for instance, or Kingdom Hearts, I'll still try to learn as much as I can about it and make whatever you're requesting. If you did like this video, please be sure to like it down below, comment, subscribe, and share it with your friends. I'll see you next time.